I thought my boss was a simple pharmacist until he pulled an illegal weapon to protect a deadly organized scheme. And now I'm running to avoid a serious felony charge that could cost me decades of my freedom. My only hope of survival is an uncle who just revealed a dark, hidden past that's even more dangerous than the men hunting us. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold Elena's head steady as she drifted in and out of consciousness in the back seat. The rhythmic thumping of the tires against the rain-slicked asphalt felt like a countdown I couldn't stop. Every time the car hit a pothole, she would groan, a low, guttural sound that tore through my chest. I looked at the rearview mirror, hoping to see the bright lights of the city or the glowing red sign of the hospital emergency room, but all I saw was the pitch-black void of the countryside and the pale, sweating face of Uncle Victor. Victor wasn't driving like a man trying to save his niece. He was driving like a man who was being hunted. His eyes flicked constantly between the road ahead and the side mirrors, his knuckles white as bone against the steering wheel. We were supposed to be there 20 minutes ago. The shortcut he took had led us deep into the industrial outskirts, a labyrinth of rusted warehouses and dead-end tracks where the streetlights had been shattered long ago. "Victor, she's getting colder," I whispered, my voice cracking. "We need a doctor. Now! Why did you turn off the main road?" He didn't answer. He just pressed harder on the accelerator, the engine of the old sedan screaming in protest. I looked down at Elena. She wasn't just sick. This wasn't a sudden flu or a faint. There were bruises on her wrists I hadn't noticed before, and a strange metallic smell clung to her clothes. Something sharp, like a chemical cleaning agent. Earlier that evening, she had burst into my apartment trembling, clutching a heavy leather bag she refused to open. "They're coming, Mark," she had said, her eyes wide with a terror I'd never seen. "The people from the organized scheme, they found out." 10 minutes later, she had collapsed. Suddenly, Victor slammed on the brakes. The seatbelt bit into my shoulder as we skidded, the car fishtailing wildly before coming to a jarring halt in the middle of a narrow bridge. My heart leaped into my throat. Through the windshield, I saw them. 2 heavy black SUVs had blocked the path, their high beams blinding us, turning the rain into a curtain of falling diamonds. "Victor?" I gasped, shielding my eyes. He didn't panic. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a heavy, dark object. It was an illegal weapon, blunt, cold, and professional. My stomach turned. My quiet, boring uncle, the man who spent his weekends gardening, was holding a piece of hardware that didn't belong in the hands of a civilian. "Listen to me, Mark," Victor said, his voice dropping to a terrifying, calm low. "They don't want you. They want what's in Elena's bag. If they find it, they'll use it to frame all of us. They'll slap us with a serious felony charge and attempt to ruin our lives with a massive prison sentence. We'll never see the sun again." The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the night. I saw shadows moving behind the blinding lights, figures in heavy coats, moving with a disciplined military precision. These weren't just petty criminals. They were part of a deep, organized group that operated in the shadows of the city. "Hide!" Victor ordered, his voice cracking like a whip. "Get Elena on the floor. Get under the coats. Don't breathe. Don't make a sound, no matter what you hear." I didn't think. I scrambled, pulling Elena's limp body down into the cramped footwell, throwing the heavy wool blankets and our winter coats over us until the world turned dark and muffled. I could feel Elena's shallow breath against my neck. I pressed my hand over her mouth, terrified she might cough. The driver's side door opened. The cold wind rushed in, carrying the scent of ozone and wet pavement. I heard Victor step out. "You're a long way from home, Victor," a voice boomed, deep, raspy, and chillingly familiar. "Hand over the girl and the bag, and maybe we won't have to call in the Internal Security Service to clean up the mess." "She's not here," Victor lied, his voice steady. A heavy silence followed, broken only by the steady drum of rain on the car roof. Then, I heard the sound of a heavy boot stepping onto the running board of our car. The vehicle tilted slightly under the weight. A hand gripped the edge of the rear door handle, just inches from my head. The lock clicked. The door began to creak open, and a sliver of freezing light pierced through the gap in the blankets, landing directly on my eye. Through the fabric, I saw a face leaning in, a face I had seen every day for the last 5 years. It was my boss from the pharmacy. He wasn't looking for medicine. He was holding a suppressed illegal weapon, and his eyes were searching the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs with such violence I was sure the man leaning into the car could hear it. Mr. Sterling, the owner of the pharmacy where I'd worked for 3 years, stared into the darkened back seat. This was the man who had given me a bonus when my mother was sick, the man who always asked about my hobbies, now standing in the rain with cold, dead eyes and a heavy illegal weapon clutched in his gloved hand. He didn't look like a pharmacist. He looked like a professional executioner for the organized scheme he'd apparently been running behind the counter. "Mark," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the rain. "I know you're under there. I can see the way the coats are moving with your breath. Don't make this harder for yourself. You're a good kid. You don't want to be an accomplice to whatever Elena has done." I froze, my hand still clamped over Elena's mouth. She was burning up, her skin slick with sweat, but she remained motionless. Beside me, the leather bag felt like a block of lead. "She stole something that doesn't belong to her," Sterling continued, his tone conversational, as if we were discussing an inventory error. "If the Internal Security Service gets a hold of those records, it's not just a fine, it's a serious felony charge. We're talking about decades in a high-security facility, but if you give me the bag now, I can make sure your name never appears in the report." Outside, I heard Victor growl. "He's not giving you a damn thing, Sterling. Move away from the car." "Or what, Victor?" Sterling's shadow shifted as he turned slightly toward my uncle. "You're outnumbered. My people are already at the other end of the bridge. There's nowhere to go. Hand over the girl and the prohibited substances she took from the lab, and we'll let you walk." Prohibited substances? Lab? My mind was spinning. Elena worked as a data analyst for a logistics firm, or so I thought. I realized then that the packages of a prohibited substance Sterling was talking about weren't just chemicals. They were the evidence of a massive organized scheme that probably reached the highest levels of the city's pharmaceutical industry. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the front of the car. Victor had thrown something, a distraction device, and the world turned into a white, ringing void. The car rocked as Victor scrambled back into the driver's seat. I heard a muffled shout, the sound of a window shattering, and then the engine roared to life with a desperate mechanical scream. "Get down!" Victor yelled. He slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching as we slammed into the front of one of the SUVs. The impact threw me against the back of the seat, but Victor didn't stop. He shifted gears, the transmission grinding horribly, and floored it. We lurched forward, sideswiping Sterling's car with a shower of sparks and the sickening sound of metal being torn open. Bullets, the sound of illegal weapons being fired, whizzed past the windows. But Victor was driving like a demon possessed, weaving the sedan through the gap he'd forced open. We plummeted off the bridge and onto a dirt track that ran parallel to the river. The car was shaking, the steering wheel vibrating in Victor's hands, but we were moving. For 5 minutes we drove in total silence, the only sound being the frantic swish of the wipers and the heavy gasping of our breath. Victor kept his eyes on the road, his face a mask of blood and rain. "Are we safe?" I choked out, finally sitting up and pulling the blankets off Elena. "For now," Victor rasped. "But they'll have the roads blocked. We can't go to the hospital. Every clinic in this sector is monitored by their group. They have eyes everywhere." "Victor, we have to," I insisted, looking at Elena. She was pale, her lips turning a faint shade of blue. "She's dying, look at her." Victor pulled the car over into a thicket of trees and turned off the lights. He turned around, his expression unreadable in the gloom. "Open the bag, Mark. You need to see why they're willing to kill us." With trembling fingers, I pulled the zipper. I expected to see stacks of cash or bricks of prohibited substances. Instead, the bag was filled with dozens of glass vials filled with a shimmering, iridescent liquid and a thick folder of documents stamped with the seal of the city's internal security service. I grabbed the folder and flipped it open. As I scanned the pages, my blood turned to ice. It wasn't just a list of names, it was a payroll. Dozens of police officers, judges, and doctors were on it. But my eyes stopped at a photo clipped to the very back of the file, a photo of a much younger Victor standing next to Sterling, both of them wearing the same dark uniforms. "Victor," I whispered, looking up at him. "What is this?" Before he could answer, Elena's hand suddenly shot up, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes snapped open, but they were bloodshot and unfocused. She leaned toward my ear, her voice a terrifying, raspy hiss. "Don't trust him, Mark," she wheezed. "He's not saving us. He's the one who's supposed to deliver the shipment." At that exact moment, the sound of a helicopter began to throb in the distance, and Victor's phone on the dashboard lit up with a message that made my heart stop. It was a text from Sterling. "The trackers are live. Finish it now, or we both lose everything." Victor slowly reached for the illegal weapon resting on the passenger seat, his eyes locking onto mine in the rearview mirror. The air in the car was suffocating. Victor's hand tightened around the illegal weapon, his knuckles white as bone. "Don't trust him." Elena's words echoed in my skull like a death knell. I looked from the bag of iridescent vials to my uncle's scarred, shadowed face. Was he really the monster she claimed? Or was he the only thing standing between us and a serious felony charge that would lead to an enormous prison sentence? "Mark, listen to me," Victor said, his eyes still fixed on the rearview mirror where the helicopter's searchlight was sweeping the tree line. "I was one of them, years ago, before you were born. Sterling and we built this organized scheme from the ground up. We thought we were untouchable. But when they started testing their prohibited substances on innocent people, on people like Elena, I tried to get out. They didn't let me. They've been holding my past over my head for 20 years. The helicopter was closer now, the thrumming of the rotors vibrating through the car's frame. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker above. "Vehicle 409, pull over immediately. You are in possession of stolen property and are facing a massive prison sentence. Surrender now." "They're not the law, Mark," Victor hissed, slamming the car back into gear. "That helicopter belongs to a private security firm owned by the group. If we stop, we vanish. Forever." He didn't point the weapon at me. He shoved it into my hands. "If they get close, you use it. Only if you have to. I'm going to get us to the center of the city, to the main headquarters of the Internal Security Service. It's the only place they can't follow." We took off, the sedan swerving wildly as Victor pushed the engine past its breaking point. The chase was a blur of neon lights and screeching tires. Sterling's SUVs appeared again, trying to ram us off the road. Every time they got close, Victor would pull a maneuver that seemed to defy physics. He wasn't just a gardener. He was a man who had spent a lifetime running from the ghosts of his past. "The bag!" Elena gasped, her voice stronger now. "Mark, the blue vial. It's the only thing that can stop the reaction. They injected me at the lab. It's a synthetic toxin." I scrambled through the bag, my hands slick with sweat. I found the iridescent blue vial and a clean syringe tucked into a side pocket. With trembling hands, I followed Elena's whispered instructions, injecting the liquid into her arm. Almost instantly, the gray tint began to fade from her skin, and her breathing steadied. We were blocks away from the Internal Security Service headquarters when the first SUV slammed into our rear bumper. The car spun, crashing into a row of parked vehicles. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood. "Go!" Victor yelled, kicking his door open. "Take the bag and Elena. Run for the gates. The guards there are the only ones who aren't on Sterling's payroll yet. I'll hold them off." "Victor, no!" I screamed. But he was already out of the car, standing tall in the middle of the street. He looked at me one last time, a sad, weary smile on his face. "Tell your mother I'm sorry about the garden, Mark. Now move!" I grabbed Elena, who could now stand on her own, and we bolted toward the towering stone pillars of the headquarters. Behind us, the sounds of a fierce confrontation erupted. The rhythmic cracks of illegal weapons and the shouting of men. I didn't look back. I couldn't. We reached the gates just as the Internal Security Service's tactical teams swarmed out, their heavy gear reflecting the streetlights. I threw the bag at the lead officer's feet and collapsed, shielding Elena with my body. "It's all in there," I yelled. "The payroll, the substances, the evidence of the organized scheme. Just help her." The world became a whirlwind of shouting and sirens. I saw Sterling being tackled to the ground just as he stepped out of his SUV, his face twisted in a mask of rage. The documents we carried were enough to trigger a massive investigation that would eventually bring down the entire group, leading to dozens of people facing a serious felony charge and decades behind bars. But Victor was gone. When the smoke cleared and the area was secured, they found his car. But my uncle had vanished into the shadows of the city he knew so well. 6 months later, the city felt different. The organized scheme had been dismantled, and the streets felt safer. Elena had made a full recovery, her testimony serving as the final nail in Sterling's coffin. We were sitting in a small cafe, watching the rain, when a waiter approached our table. "Someone left this for you," he said, handing me a small, weathered envelope. Inside was a single packet of seeds for a rare type of flower Victor used to grow, and a short, handwritten note. "The garden is finally clean. Stay safe." I looked out at the crowded street, but the man who had saved our lives was nowhere to be seen. He was a shadow again, but this time he was a shadow that had finally found his way home.